Hi, how's it going? This is Resident Colwood, Resident slash of under slash Colwood for BitChute, YouTube, etc. Insanity, same old shit. God, it's been a crazy quarantine, right? Like we're all feeling like The Shining. We're all gonna go crazy and start wielding an axe to a door. But I'm here to continue my read a lot of reviews for John Philip Court's continuing blog series, The Return of Dark Shadows. It's just been that crazy, right? We're all feeling it. By this point, you would think we would be, right? Series 12, Chapter 9, Runaway, Run Far Away. An early evening wind brought in a cold storm that sprinkled a fresh coating of rain along the Collinsport shoreline. This marked a new milky moon that hung over a purple sky as the sun was finally setting, basking in its final rays of light on the circle in the sky. Over in a small cottage-style house on Cromwell Street, Detective Bureau Covert quickly rushed around, finalizing his prepared meal for his in-home date with Carolyn Stoddard. Candles were lit all over the living room where he had prepared a picnic-style dinner where the two could snuggle up on a warm black and yellow garden flannel blanket. The day before, Carolyn had shown odd behavior under Barnabas's mind control. According to Carolyn, Arabella quickly left town, leaving her hotel room covered in blood with Vicky's coat plopped in the corner. Another mystery. Where was Vicky? Why was her coat there? No one understood why. The answers were simple yet hidden. Barnabas had killed Arabella to protect Elizabeth's secret connection to Vicky that Arabella discovered. This secret, this thread of timeline events needed to be preserved in his attempt to right the many wrongs he had committed in his first time in 1967. Unfortunately for Barnabas, Carolyn found Arabella's body first and planted Vicky's coat, hoping she would be considered a suspect in Arabella's murder, thus fulfilling Arabella's manipulative plot to rid Vicky of potentially becoming Elizabeth's sole heir. It was a gamble Arabella paid with her life and wrapped the otherwise good natured Carolyn into a conspirator. Despite all the chaos surrounding her world at the moment, Carolyn kept an evening date with Vera Clovert. Their relationship was moving at a rapid pace, and he was growing more and more in love with her, despite his feeling that she was hiding something dark, something terrible for Carolyn's part. Her world was in turmoil, and Bureau was her saving and calming grace. Carolyn walked up to Bureau's door and took a deep breath before she knocked on it, softly at first, but then two more tougher raps uttering him inside. He was eager to see her and hopefully straighten things out about his client Arabella's sudden departure from Collinsport. He flung the door open. Come in, Bureau said, ushering the balmy-faced Carolyn in from the drizzly evening outside. I hope I'm not early, she said, her big blue eyes gazing up at the handsome detective as their two bodies shined in the candlelight of the front room. No, perfect timing. Make yourself at home, Bureau said as Carolyn removed her coat and Bureau placed it on the sofa next to the picnic in the center of the room. Oh, Bureau, this is just adorable. Thank you. You didn't have to go to all this trouble just for me, but thank you, Carolyn said, her mind seemingly back to normal. This is just the first round, Bureau said, referencing to the courses of food he had prepared. You've thought of everything, Carolyn said, her eye lit like two Sharpay blue lagoons. Well, since it's so rainy outside tonight, I thought we could still have some sort of picnic, but make it indoors, Bureau said. adoringly as he pointed over to his small living room floor that had been created into a small carpet picnic with two baskets of finger foods and a blanket of fruits. Well, aren't you cute? Carolyn whispered, her eyes deeply in love with the man she saw in front of her. As the two sat on the floor of his living room, she tasted each of the small plates he had prepared, a small bowl of French onion soup, then a cheese platter, and later, hopefully, dessert, sweet strawberries and champagne. So, can I ask you something? He asked as she nodded and sipped her soup while the rain poured down outside yesterday. Outside. Yesterday, you seemed so off when we were asking about Arabella. I don't know, you weren't yourself. Carolyn paused her meal. She knew it too. She knew she was off. She knew everything. Bureau listened. I know what I look like. I know that things are off the charts. Weird right now, but she paused again. But what? It's Barnabas. There's just something about him. Yesterday, it's all a blur. I know that we spoke. I know what I said, that my Aunt Arabella left town. I know about this thing with Vicky missing, but I don't remember it. I know it happened, but I don't remember the actual moments. Does that make sense? That is strange. So you don't remember seeing Arabella in the lobby like you said you did? Vera wondered. Carolyn couldn't put two and two together. She knew in her mind it happened because Barnabas planted that in her mind. He controlled her thoughts, and her brain came up with that lie to cover his. But her instincts, her true womanly instincts, were telling her it wasn't all she believed it to be. There was more. But what was that? Was unclear. Sorry. I think I do. I remember seeing her, but I don't. I just can't say that I saw her where I said I saw her. I'm confusing you. I could tell what I do remember is coming home upset and speaking with Barnabas. He was at Collinwood already, ever since he showed up and asked to live in the old house, things have gotten much weirder around here, our place. More than normal, I can tell you that, Carolyn confided. How so? He wondered. Well, Vicky, for instance, she up and vanishes in the middle of her job. Don't you think that has something to do with Arabella going to Europe so quickly? Bureau questioned as he fed Carolyn a nibble of French cheese on their picnic. I don't know. I just don't know. Carolyn confessed as her mind was still in confused fog from Barnabas's controlling powers the day before. I don't know how much I don't know much about Barnabas Collins, where he came from, who he's been in contact with, or what he's even doing here, but I can tell you, I kind of do feel the same way you do, that there is something extra strange or different about him. He seems mysterious, not in the good way Vera mentioned. That's a There's a good mysterious, Carolyn wondered. Yes, like you. You're a mysterious woman, Carolyn. Buggling, even sensational. Vera said as he inched close to her. Tell me more, Carolyn cloyed. About you or Barnabas? Vera teased as Carolyn scoffed. Forget him, Carolyn whispered as she sat up on all fours and walked over to Vera's side of the picnic blanket and kissed him deeply and passionately. Their bodies soon became tangled up in each other, locked in a lover's knot. They twisted and turned on the small, makeshift carpet picnic. Their eyes became locked in entangling gaze that it felt as if they were looking right through their physical bodies and into their souls. They began to remove each other's clothes. I don't know why that popped up. Sorry. They began to remove each other's clothes, garment by garment, slowly revealing their bodies to each other for the first time. They could feel each other's heartbeat. The blood pumping through their veins was like a freight train charging through the night. Each touch felt like fire. Each kiss felt like warm sun heating the other's flesh as they were sunbathing on the beach in the middle of a spring storm. This room felt like a tropical rainforest. Wait a second, guys. I'm sorry. um, as the thunder blasted across the sky, lightning for a split second, at the time exposing the dark clouds above the Collinsport teeny skyline, Vera and Carolyn connected like never before. It was a passion filled moment that seemed to last forever. Their two bodies linked now and always, his and hers, their naked flesh sizzling with each other, and every touch of a wet kiss and passionate love. Carolyn had never felt this way for another man. Not Joe, not Buzz, no one. The rain poured down like a waterfall from the sky. Of a sudden flash of clarity lit inside of Carolyn's mind. Flashes of her memory of what she saw in the hotel room came back, like quick glimpses of a movie screen. Arabella's face, Barnabas's face, blood, the coat, Arabella's face again, Barnabas again, more blood. Her brain was telling her she knew more than she was leading on during their moment of passion. Her mind seemed to unlock. It was like a fever had broken and everything became clear to her. She grabbed Bureau's head and pushed it down to her lips, passionately kissing him while she was interlaced her legs around his body, basking in the glow of candlelight. Carolyn suddenly remembered Barnabas did indeed have something to do with Arabella going missing. Bureau's love had unlocked all that was left of Barnabas's control of her brain. The fog had lifted. The terrible night when Arabella was killed, all the blood, all the screaming in the body, the wounds on her neck. It was all clear to Carolyn. She gasped and held her breath. Are you okay? Brewer whispered in the middle of their passionate embrace. Carolyn smiled softly and wiped the sweat from his brow, unsure of how to answer. Then, as the rain poured down outside, causing small little rivers of water to trickle down the glass, Brewer's window, and reflect on the two, their bare skin as they lay on the floor naked in love. And now, in afterglow, Carolyn decided she had to confess her relationship too new and too precise to start often lies. Too precious. You're going to hate me, she said, glistening in the candlelight as he sparked up a cigarette. What? He asked as his fingers danced in the smoke, waving away from her porcelain face. I think I lied to you. To everyone. Bureau turned and looked at her, almost hurt. Go on, he said, unsure of what he was about to hear. My aunt had a terrible plan to do something to Vicky. She knew something about her. I can't remember what. But she wanted to get Vicky out of the way. Carolyn said, her mind still not all the way as unlocked as she thought. Vera paused. He knew what Arabella had discovered about Vicky. He knew it because he was the one who had did the digging. It was he who handed off the proof to Arabella to use against Elizabeth because of his snooping paid for by Arabella. These events were able to happen. Bureau's face turned solemn. Was he the reason Arabella or Vicky or both of them were probably dead? He continued, so Arabella did kill Vicky and take off to Europe. We have to find her, Bureau said, getting halfway up from the floor and attempting to put all the blame on Arabella and off of him. No, no, she didn't have time to. You see, whatever she had over Vicky, Barnabas discovered, and for reasons I can't fully recollect, he made her go missing, I think. I think maybe the blood of Arabella's was Arabella's. I'm trying to remember. But it's coming back in pieces, Carolyn said, neglecting to remember she wasn't the one that was in on a plan with Arabella to off Vicky, and she was the one who left the coat as a plant to frame Vicky. We have to find that man and get him questioned. Patterson needs to know this right away. You have to tell him everything you remember now, because yesterday he took you at your word with that Arabella left. Bureau said, getting up and rushing to the phone. Wait, Carolyn screamed from the carpet. Barnabas will kill me. Bureau suddenly saw that Carolyn was deathly afraid of her new cousin. That man was the man that was so mysterious that it made her tremble where she stood. The fear was all over her face. The thought of Barnabas coming after her was too frightening even for Bureau, who wasn't afraid of anything. He would do anything to protect Carolyn, but Barnabas, if Carolyn was telling the truth, had to be stopped. What should we do then? Bureau wondered. But Carolyn only shook her head without ideas. You see it too. You can see there is something dangerous about Barnabas that I can't put my finger on. Something that I don't want to cross. Not again, Carolyn said. Again, Bureau wondered. I think he did something to me to make me forget what I know. I think he's done something to me, Bureau. I'm scared of him, she confessed. That settles it. We have to go to Patterson. He asked to step in somehow, Bureau said, exhausting all his ideas about what was really happening with Carolyn and Arabella and Vicky. What can he do? Carolyn wondered as she blew out 2 candles next to her and she got dressed. He'll arrest Barnabas. He has to. If you're right, he's the one that did something to those women. Carolyn knew that the truth would come out, and she worried. Was she remembered everything the way it happened? Was she more involved in this scheme than she had yet to remember? And if so, would she lose Bureau altogether when he found out? Carolyn was now worried she may lose the man she loved, perhaps the truth. Then and nothing but the truth should not fully come out after all, and remain with Arabella wherever she was. At Collinwood, the storm battered the branches of the large oak tree that shaded the French-style windows of the great drawing room on the first floor. The branches, like snarled up and twisted fingers of which scratched the glass with all the energy of the powerful wet wind. Dressed in a glamorous dark velvet purple robe, dripping in her trademark droplet pearl earrings, Elizabeth Collins Stoddard stared down deeply into paperwork Arabella had left with her, proving she was Victoria Winter's mother. The paperwork that Bureau had found handed off to Arabella and set off the events of the 2 missing women. Liz felt awful responsible for Vicky's life and her vanishing. She was racked with guilt about where Vicky had gone and why perhaps Vicky too discovered the truth and was angry and went back to New York. Perhaps something happened to her that no one would ever find out. Collinsport was notorious for strange and sudden disappearances, Elizabeth's husband being one of the most famous cases. Whatever the real reason for Vicky's vanishing, Elizabeth had to be sure no one knew of these documents, the birth certificate, the government records. No one could know. She stood up from her comfy green sofa and walked over to the roaring fire as a thunderclap startled her in her place. The shock of the sound in the sky caused her to knock off a table with a glass of water, shattering it once it hit the hard wood floors. Her own great grandfather had laid down centuries before. As the orange glow from the hearth warmed her whole body, Elizabeth threw it into the fire, those secret documents allowing them to quickly burn up. The bits of paper turned to ash, gray, and floated up slight above the flames, then down again to the red hot embers, forever detaching Elizabeth from the truth and hopefully guarding her secret again. As she did so, a hidden wall in the corner opened up a slight bit. The wall was created centuries ago by the mansion's designers to create a private entrance for the family members who didn't want to walk the many halls to get from room to room. It was a doorway that opened into secret passageways all around the house. David knew of the. It was he watching from the crack in the door. His eyes saw everything. But he wasn't alone. A hand fell on his shoulder in the darkness. The sudden touch caused David to jump in his skin. He looked up and saw his own father, Roger Collins. Roger too lurked in the secret passage of the house, silently stalking his sister. And now he knew Elizabeth was keeping something so damning to her that she had to burn it. Her secret was now a mystery he needed to solve. "What are you hiding, dear sister? What are you hiding?" Roger whispered as David looked back into the room, watching Elizabeth, that tears from her eyes that reflected the cracking fire in front of her. The storm continued to blow, the cold wind from the north down onto Maine. It was tearing trees, lifting the levels of the small rivers in and around town. A car carrying Justin India, trapped in Vicky's body, fresh from the daring escape from Windcliff, arrived in the blustery front area of the old house. The sun was now deep on the horizon, hidden by the storm's clouds. They were there to confront Barnabas and send India back to her time. It was now or never. Too much happened, too much was at stake, and Barnabas had to figure his way without India's presence in 1966, no matter how much he needed her energy force in this time period. As Justin and India quickly rushed into the old house, hiding from the rain and ready to state their case to Barnabas, another car pulled up, and this one was with this front lights out. It was Sheriff George Patterson, Justin's father, and Julia Hoffman. They had followed all the way from Windcliff and Bangor. Julia needed to see where this would lead and what this Victoria Winters was talking about. "What is this place?" Julia said in the darkened car as the thunder clapped in her face in the white light. "It's what the Collins family calls the old house. The family used to live here before the big house was built in the late 1700s, George explained in the family lore. "Why would they come here?" Julia wondered of India and Justin. "I don't know. To my knowledge, Elizabeth didn't want anyone inside. It's been abandoned for decades. They were planning on demolishing it, but Liz had a change of heart 12 years ago and wanted to remodel it and give it to her brother Roger when he married his wife Laura, but the marriage broke up. Plans fell through," George explained again. Suddenly a call came in on the sheriff's two-way radio in his cruiser. "Dispatch to the sheriff! Dispatch to the sheriff! Come in!" George rushed over to the open door of his squad car and leaned in, his burly body, and pulled on the two-way. "This is Patterson, over. Sheriff requesting your additional administrative assistance at a possible burglary downtown, over." "I have to get downtown," George said in a disappointed sigh as he turned the ignition to his cruiser. "I'll be fine," Julie said, reaching for the car door. "What? I'm not leaving you here. We don't know what's going on in there. I don't know the state of my son. It could be dangerous. No, I'll take you to the station and we can come back," George ordered. "That's unacceptable, Sheriff Patterson. Trust me. I'm very much capable of taking care of myself," Julia said as she tipped her purse to that George could see inside revealing a small hand revolver with a white handle and a silver trigger. "I should ask you if you have a permit for that," George said with a strange look to Julia. "I can take care of myself," Julia said again. "Dr. Hoffman, we've only known each other on professional terms, especially with what happened to my wife. But please, whatever you do, do not use that gun. Not on Victoria," and George paused. "Not on my son." Julia knew her history with the weapon. She had lived through a terrible event in her life that involved a similar pistol. She didn't want to use it. She, in fact, hated to have it with her, but she knew she needed it to protect her. It made her feel safe, even if she never planned to use it. Not like before, not like the death she caused before many, many years ago. Tonight, she needed it, however. "I'll only use it to scare them. If God forbid something should happen, no one will get hurt, I promise," Julia said as she unlatched the door and headed for the old house. George drove off, leaving Julia to enter the home alone. She was being truthful. She did not want to use her weapon unless she had to, but the darkness of the very first room of the old house she entered made her reach into her bag and grab it. She pointed it out in front of her and walked slowly. Each room was darker than the last. It was as if someone had been staying there, living among the dust furniture from another time. But she didn't see India and Justin. She continued on her way upstairs as the torn wallpaper and water-damaged ceilings guided her way. In the basement, Justin and India, still in Vicky's body, stood staring down at Barnabas's coffin. The room had been patched together a hastened fashion, as this time Barnabas did not have Willie to sort out his world for him. Willie had yet to arrive in Collinsport, and Barnabas had to fend for himself, killing animals in the forest for blood, living off the land where no one would notice, but still haunted by the murder of Arabella. Justin and India waited for the last hours of the sun to dip below the sea and set, when finally he, the man, the monster, the conflicted killer, would rise from his crypt. As they waited to confront him, Julie made her way down the stairs. After searching the second floor and back into the foyer, she turned the corner and saw a door at the end of the small, narrow hall that she had not gone into. She went and slowly pulled the heavy door to the basement. Julia, pointing the gun out in front of her, walked slowly down each step, one foot in front of the other. Her hand was shaking. She could hear people talking. She could see lanterns lit down below. Then as she arrived, she saw Justin and India staring down at a coffin that was open and dimly lit room. Then a man appeared. "Barnabas." "India," Barnabas whispered as he lifted himself out of the coffin by levitating his body. Julia gasped at the frightful nature of the entire thing. "You have to end this, Barnabas. You have to send me back." "I can't do this anymore," India begged. "You have no idea what we've been through the last few days," Justin added. "India, where have you been? We've been in search for you for days. Arabella is dead," Barnabas explained, conveniently leaving blank the fact that he was the one who killed Arabella. "What? Arabella is dead? How?" "Do I want to know how?" India said, knowing something was amiss about the way Barnabas was telling the story. It was clear he wasn't giving all the details he was involved in. It's complicated, he said. Surprise, surprise, Justin said, rolling his eyes. The family is beginning to think Arabella had something to do with your disappearance. They don't know she's dead. Signs are pointing that you were killed and not Arabella. Again, it's very complicated story. It's a very complicated story. That's why it is important that you're back. Where have you been? Barnabas questioned. I was trapped at Wincliffe Sanitarium, Barnabas. This doctor, she wanted to keep me there. She thinks I'm insane. I can't take this anymore. You have to send me home. India said as Justin grabbed her to comfort her. Barnabas took a deep breath and shook his head no. My job is not even close from being done, India. I need you here. Your power, the energy I see in your heart is what I need to correct all these mistakes, the mistakes I made. But terrible things have happened, and again I have to correct them. The family believes Victoria dead. We have to prove that she isn't and allow them to think Arabella has moved to Europe without cause, Barnabas explained. What did you do to her? Justin said, starting to figure out there was more to this than he knew. Barnabas turned to Justin and said, in a very matter-of-fact voice, corrected her course. I need to feed. Barnabas suddenly said, I need to feed, he repeated. My God, India said, understanding what he meant. As they spoke in the basement, a loud creaking sound came from the staircase. They all turned, and standing there was the woman. In another time, Barnabas would marry and adopt a child with Julia Hoffman, pointing a gun directly into Barnabas's face. All right, I've heard enough of this. I don't know what's going on, but I certainly heard you confess to a murder, Julia said, stepping now into the bottom of the basement. Julia, Barnabas whispered. How do you know me? Who are you? Who are you? Julia shouted with her gun ready to shoot. Dr. Hoffman, please, you don't know what you're doing. Please put the gun down so that we can explain everything. There is a truth to what I told you at the hospital. I was telling you everything truthfully, India said. Barnabas turned to India and fumed at her, realizing that they included about him. Everything, Barnabas growled. Everything, Julia repeated. I can't for the life of me understand what's happening or who is telling the truth, but as soon as Sheriff Patterson comes back, you're all going to jail. Someone is responsible for a death. That much I heard, Julia said. Justin didn't know what to do. All he could think of India and how the clock was ticking on her to get back to her time. Selflessly, as much as he was beginning to fall in love for the young woman he met in the middle of the street in the late fog, he did want her to be happy and back in her time. Justin lunged at Julie and grabbed her by the wrist that was holding the gun. She screamed and shot the gun into the ceiling of the basement. The two began to struggle over the weapon. Then Julie launched her leg into Justin's groin, knocking him to the ground. India screamed in Victoria's pained voice as she rushed over to Justin, rolling around on the stone-cold basement floor in pain. Julia, her hair mussed and pulled, her clothes jolted by the quick fight with Justin, pointed the gun at Barnabas. Julia put the gun down. You don't know what you're doing, Barnabas said, with his hands out to the side, slowly walking up to Julia. Don't take another step. Don't take another step, she screamed. Barnabas's eyes darkened to blackness like his onyx ring. He hissed and showed his long, sharp fangs that thirsted for blood. Blood he needed to survive. Perhaps you should take another step, Dr. Hoffman, up the stairs and out of this house, Barnabas said. Julie's eyes were as big as saucers. She screamed at the sight of Barnabas's hunger. Granted, as he continued to come closer and closer to her. Her hand was shaking, the gun was shaking. The moment came where the monster was only 2 feet from her. She shot him 3 times. Indy and Justin lowered their heads, hidden from shrapnel or ricocheted bullets. Once the smoke cleared, Julie saw the vampire still standing without a wound to count. Barnabas lunged at Julie. He grabbed her arm and yanked her back close to him. She screamed and tried to pull away, stretching her neck in the process. A disastrous mistake. Barnabas, thirsty for the nectar of her veins, furious with her exposure, hissed and opened his mouth, showing the daggers that were his teeth. He sunk his mouth into her neck, the bite into her flesh. He screamed. Blood oozed out of her neck, down his lips and onto her clothes. Then Julie, in complete shock of what she had just seen and felt, rolled her eyes back and fainted there on the first step on the staircase to the basement. At a quiet corner booth table at the Collinsport Inn Cafe, under an orange light, Brio's psychic sister, Noelle Clovert, sat with an empty diner plate and a cup of piping hot coffee. She pulled the curtains back from her booth window and watched as the storm blew across outside in a strong gust of wind and rain. She shivered at the notion of being out in the elements. Sorry, guys. Okay. She went back into her wool jacket pocket and pulled out the deck of tarot cards. She hated them. She wished she didn't know how to read them, but something in the air, something in the wind, something in the storm told her she needed to let go of her fears, of her powers, and read them that night. She pushed her plate and coffee cup to the other side of her table and shuffled her cards, then placed them down in the stack. She cut the stack and removed the 4 cards, facing them down in a line. One by one, she clipped the cards: the Queen of Cups, the Vagabond Child, the Dark Love, the New Moon. What do they say? A woman said, standing next to the table. It was Maggie Evans, pouring Noelle a fresh cup of coffee. Maggie was smiling, entertained by a whole idea of the magic, the supernatural, and the tarot card, but Noelle was in no happy mood. The card she pulled told her everything was about to change, and not for the good, not in the slightest. Well, Noelle, what do they say? Maggie asked again. Noelle remained silent. Hun, are you okay? Noelle flipped the cards back and cut the other half of the deck, and then flipped over one card. The Wounded Heart. Noelle flipped the card back, face down. She knew what the combination of those cards meant. It was a horrible sight, a terrible fate for someone, for everyone. I think I need, Noelle said as she stood up, putting one hand on the booth's table. As she got her footing, her eyes rolled back into her head and she fainted. Oh my God, Noelle, honey, are you okay? Honey, Maggie said, gently slapping Noelle's cheek as the other guest gasped at the shocking sight. Noelle opened her eyes and looked up at Maggie's face and in a faint, labored voice warned, "Run away. Run far away." Okay, that's the read along. Here's the review. Really, again, really great scene setting. The characters are very interesting. Here's what, when I give my opinion on the characters and stuff, again, that's my opinion. And I think Noelle saw a lot of things. I think she saw what Barnabas had done to Noelle in a sense, what Barnabas had done to Arabelle, or God, India, brought her back through the cards and stuff. But I think she saw all the changes now that have happened that Barnabas cannot fix now. That's my opinion on that. And here's, to me, the antagonist in this story is not a person, it's life itself. There's just things you cannot change about your fate or your destiny. And that's something Barnabas is trying to do, and seemingly to no avail. It's a really amazing journey. It's one hell of a story. Noelle is one hell of a character too. The introduction of her is huge. I am curious. There's so much going on here, which is great. You know, you want a lot going on in a story. You don't just want one thing. And that's something John does time and time again. He always has a lot going on in his Dark Shadow story, which is fun. So this is amazing, obviously. I love it. I love the whole thing. I think it's amazing. I can't wait till Monday. I will be doing the read alongs back on Monday. I'm sorry, guys. Just things have been crazy around here. I'm sure you guys have had crazy stuff going on too. My insulin pump's going off like crazy. I gotta treat a little sugar here. So I'll let you guys go. I'm gonna do 2 more videos tonight, but I'm gonna get this up here now. Link's gonna be in the description box for this. Trying to think if there's anything I missed. Again, Julia, the one thing I want to point out is, for sort of a character retrospective a little bit with Julia, if for those who did not read the last series of this, series 11, which is really good too, Julia Hoffman's past was revealed. John had revealed that Julia Hoffman shot her husband because she felt he was having another affair, and she killed him. You know, so that's something that she felt very. She didn't mean to. It was an accident. The gun went off by accident. So, because she had pointed at her own head, and he had wrestled the gun with her, and then boom. But that's what happened there. So that's what the story was talking about. Julia had an incident with a gun. I've been following this series for a while. Can you tell? Can you tell? Oh, goodness. But really, really good. Link's going to be in the description box. I'll see you guys later tonight. Have a great one. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.